Welcome to the Awesomers.com podcast. If you love to learn, and if you're motivated to expand your mind, and heck, if you desire to break through those traditional paradigms and find your own version of success, you are in the right place. Awesomers around the world are on a journey to improve their lives and the lives of those around them. We believe in paying it forward, and we fundamentally try to live up to the great Zig Ziglar quote, where he said, "You can have everything in your life you want if you help enough other people get what they want." It doesn't matter where you came from, it only matters where you're going. My name is Steve Simonson, and I hope you will join me on this awesomer journey.
If you're launching a new product manufactured in China, you will need professional, high-resolution, Amazon-ready photographs. Because Simo Global has a team of professionals in China, you will oftentimes receive your listings photographs before your product even leaves the country. This streamlined process will save you the time, money, and energy needed to concentrate on marketing and other creative content strategies before your item is in stock and ready for sale. Visit simoglobal.com to learn more, because a picture should be worth 1,000 keywords.
You are listening to episode number 126 of the Awesomers.com podcast series, and in today's episode, we wrap up our three-part series with Rob Jackson. Now, as you've already heard, probably in parts 1 and 2, Rob is a brilliant data guy and comes from a computer science background. In part 1, he talked about his origin story and some of his university experience and so forth, and even where he got his formative years in his first job. And in part 3, we talk a little bit more about some of those biggest lessons learned and some of the things that he's been able to collect in terms of experience along his journey, both as working in a big agency, as a part of the agency, as an employee, as well as running his own agency as a partner and as an entrepreneur. And Rob even talks today in part 3 about some of the critical differences and where some of the trust has been lost with agencies and how they kind of work with trying to build that trust and maintain that trust with clients. And the spoiler alert, the secret is kind of doing the right thing and delivering the goods, and they certainly understand how to do that. So I love always hanging out and talking with Rob, and I know that you will enjoy this episode as well. This is part 3 of our 3-part series with Rob Jackson, and again, it's episode 126. Just run over to awesomers.com 120/126 to find today's show notes and details. Okay, everybody, Steve Simonson back again, talking to Rob Jackson, and we're here on the Awesomers.com podcast. And so far, in our prior 2 segments, we covered kind of where Rob came from and learned all about the local Liverpool languages and nuances. And then we went further into kind of understanding, Rob through his university time and then becoming an agency guy and then starting and becoming a part of his own agency group, crossing the globe again between Spain and the UK. Now, Rob, today I want to just kind of get into the idea of some of the defining moments that we've already talked about that maybe they weigh into these lessons, but was there a big lesson you've learned along the journey so far? One or more, I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's a few, I think. I mean, really, for me, I think, one of the things that makes me passionate about what I do is having the ability to enjoy it. I think, it's sort of crazy to think that, people forget that sometimes. If you enjoy what you do, then a lot of the rest follows on from that. But I think it's quite tricky maybe to get to that point sometimes. And you and I have talked about this, in the past at your sessions is, having that personal why. But I think there was a day when, I sat down with a senior manager in my first agency, and him and I we actually just went for a walk, had a coffee and went for a walk and chatted about a whole bunch of things. And we talked about knowing yourself. I think, as you grow up in life, one of the great things about getting older is that you maybe beat yourself up less about some of the things that aren't, core strengths of your own and whatnot. And I think, as a professional, having that ability to reflect and face up to the things I'm just not as good at. I think when you sort of get to that point where you realize that I'm pretty good at these things, and I recognize that, and my peers recognize that, and my managers recognize that, it's not necessarily bad that I'm not so great at these other things. what I have to do as a professional is be aware of them and put mechanics in place to mitigate those types of things. So as a lot of former colleagues and people I've worked with will tell you, I'm pretty bad with diaries. I just get my diary mixed up. And so a friend of mine a year ago showed me how to leverage virtual assistants and things like that. And there's little apps like Calendly and things like that where you put the organization of it back onto the person that you're dealing with. And so if you have that awareness and you don't shy away from it, then I think you can put those fixes in place that can help you work around it. And I think I'm always going to be bad at calendars. That's not going to change. I'm aware of it now, and I can try and do things to work around it. So.
Well, I do think, in terms of that, big lesson, it is reasonable for us to lean into our strengths and to either step back from or mitigate the things that we're not as good at, which, some people want to call weaknesses, and our school upbringing says, oh, work on your weakness first. It's like, no, I'm just telling you as an experienced guy, focus on your strengths, manage whatever you need to in terms of the areas that are not as strong for you. And I like your idea of using either virtual assistants or using technology pieces. I think Calendly, for example, really great. Too often, even my attorneys, I have a fleet of attorneys for all kinds of different reasons. And when they're like, hey, can we have a call? It's like, hey, just go book it on Calendly. And even my attorneys are like, wow, this is cool. There's so much less back and forth, right? It's like I either have the time or I don't. And we don't have to argue about it. It's clear as a bell, and it's easy to manage. So I love those things. And for the listeners out there, one of the things that I just remind people, often the things that you don't like to do are the things you're not as good at. So even if you haven't gotten to the point where you know yourself, or whether you're able to admit that I'm not that good at this particular thing, what you hate doing is probably what you're not as good at. Now, many of us develop skills and we get good at things that we don't like, but over time, I definitely recommend leaning into the strengths, leaning into the things you like, and giving yourself permission to let some of that other stuff go. Definitely. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And I think I'm lucky from a career perspective. I'm really lucky that one of the things I love, one of my passions is new things. And so I think that has very much enabled me to evolve my career over time. I think if we just go back to what, in the beginning I was running PPC campaigns, then I was running a conversion optimization company, then I was running an analytics startup, then that analytics startup morphed into a personalization agency. We reinvented ourselves 3 times in that space, and now I'm working almost entirely in e-commerce. And I think I'm really lucky, I think, from a career perspective, that I've got that sort of inquisitiveness to try new things and to look at different skill sets and to try and continuously develop and things like that. And I know that can be quite tricky for some people, but I'm very lucky to have had that as one of the quivers in my bow or whatever.
No doubt, it's a strength of yours, and this is one of the things that, again, people don't fully understand or appreciate. The folks that love to learn and love to embrace that new ideas and innovation and so forth, they often need an integrator sitting next to them, or at least close by, to clean up some of the messes that those of us who are always on that bleeding edge tend to make. In fact, I think that our mutual friend Jason Ashby, we have the same kind of management style, if you will. Yeah. I think one of my brothers was over there helping you at KFD many years ago, and they use this description to describe my management style. It's like Steve comes in, he listens for a while, and then he throws some hand grenades, and then he leaves the room. Yeah. And then we have to clean up the mess. And I know that Jason embraced that same style. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying
you've met my colleague Adam, longtime collaborator. Really? Adam. He is my yin to my yang, and I think we realized very early on that we have very different strengths and very very complementary strengths, and him and I working together in that manner of recognizing what each other is really good at and being aware of each other's, I don't want to say weaknesses, but the things that we're not so good at. It makes for a real complementary team. And actually, Adam, his description of it was, Rob invents the time machine. We have to figure out how to build it.
That's right. I love it. Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, and Adam, again, he's a brilliant guy, and understanding that whole, yin and yang relationship, and understanding where everybody, can kind of push the thing forward. And sometimes it helps to check each other and go, hey, it's out of control because you're not, doing this or that. So I love that. Now, Rob, let's talk about, first of all, was there any particular time as you're building your agencies or doing your own startups that you ever looked at it, you're like, this is too much for me, I want to give up, I want to go do something different? At any point that you ever hit that?
Yeah, definitely. I think the jump from after we were acquired, that was a real big culture change for me. I think probably one of the points where I struggled the most was, like I said, in DBI, in the startup mode of DBI, we were very much almost like a family, a very close-knit unit. We spent a lot of time together. It was a very close-knit set of relationships across the business. Once we began to scale, opening up offices in New York and Frankfurt and Paris and things like that, it was very difficult to maintain that same level of connection, I think, with some of the team members that I had. And so that jump from sort of 30, 40, 50 staff to 60 to and beyond was really quite tricky, because also when you're in a corporate environment, you can't fully affect every one of the levers that you maybe need. And so I always felt that I was having to compromise maybe on some of the battles that I'd try and win. The nature of a bigger corporation, there's more process, more rules, there's sometimes more limitations. And in a smaller organization, if there's something wrong, you can pivot like that and change it. And so I think that, even though we were quite successful as a business unit, we grew significantly within the corporate side of things. That change in culture, I think, was one of the biggest challenges. But it just meant we had to evolve. It just meant that we were working with bigger clients, who were working bigger ticket contracts, who were speaking to different types of clients on the other side of things. And then it meant having to bring in different profiles who could work in that environment as well. So it was an absolute learning curve, but an interesting one, definitely.
Well, that's a inevitable evolution, I suppose, when you kind of go from the small to big, and these are things and lessons that have to be learned. I'm curious from your perspective, Rob. There's so many people out there in e-commerce, and they don't yet fully understand or appreciate analytics or attribution, or the evolution of how that's coming to be. Do you have any common mistakes that you see e-commerce folks out there making that you care to share?
I mean, it can't be understated just how tough it is out there right now. It is incredibly competitive for retailers and e-commerce operators right now, because not only are we dealing with quite a complex environment, different touch points, different devices, different types of users and behaviors and attitudes. Those behaviors are changing rapidly right now before our eyes. I think I saw a stat. It's something like 16% of UK households now have an Amazon or voice-enabled device in the home. And when did that happen? That has happened so quickly that how can e-commerce organizations think that they're going to be able to evolve in line as quickly enough for that? They have to look to their data. They have to look. Their audience, their customer base, their prospect base are giving out these signals day after day that e-commerce organizations have to be listening right now, because not only are we dealing with changing behaviors now, you've also got to be thinking about what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years. The high street is going to be completely different, and the set of devices people are going to be using then are going to be completely different. Technologies like augmented reality and so on are going to be continuing to disrupt again and again. And it's data. I mean, I was at a conference last week and they put it in a really smart way. Data now really, in particular, the emergence of machine learning and so on, it really gives retailers and e-commerce businesses three major capabilities, and these are really important, I think, for a modern e-commerce. Number one is to understand. So, as you said, things like attribution, things like conversion rates of different types of audiences, things like which products are trending, which content is working. Without a robust approach to data, you're never going to fully understand what's working and what's not. So your decision-making capabilities are going to be severely hamstrung without that. Number two is the ability to forecast. And so the advancements in modeling technology and machine learning and so on now, and the tools that are available out there that are readily available. No longer is this the preserve of the blue chip. No longer is this the preserve of the companies who have got those huge budgets. There are technologies out there now that you can spin up very quickly on a very moderate budget. And the barrier to entry to use those technologies is coming down all the time as well. So you can create forecasts that are way more accurate than what you were doing in your Excel 5 years ago. So you can understand, you can forecast, and then where it becomes really powerful is the ability to personalize, is the ability to change that customer journey. Because we know people have different motivations. They're at different points in the customer journey. Some people might be more considerate with quality or price or the look and feel and so on. Now, if you have understood and forecast what's going to happen, you have the power then to personalize that customer experience at the different points of the customer journey. And again, those technologies are real and they're live. We're not even talking about further down the line anymore. This is happening. I saw a great. It was a graph from the Singularity University. Do you know those guys I
know the name, yeah.
Valley think tank, yeah. So they have this. It's like a hockey stick graph of it's linear versus disruptive evolution. And what happens is they say, let me try and get this right with the screen.
Yeah.
What appears to be a very linear evolution of a technology is often thrown out of kilter when it hits this point of uplift. Now, what the guy in the talk used was mobile technology. So, when I worked in the beginning, mid 2000s, everybody was talking about the year of mobile. It's going to emerge. 2005 it came and went. It was not the year of mobile. 2006, 2007, and we were all joking about it, like, oh, the year of mobile. Everybody's still using SMS at this point and playing Snake. When suddenly, bang, 2008 comes along, 2009. iPhone launches, Android changes, and then the whole thing just completely flips on its head in a very short amount of time. We're seeing the same now for artificial intelligence and machine learning. So there's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of speculation about how it's going to happen. What I'm seeing now is there are really smart companies out there who are leveraging it, and they are seeing those business impacts, they are seeing those uplifts, they are seeing those efficiencies. And quite frankly, the cost of not getting on board with that is ultimately failure. You will really struggle to survive without embracing some of these approaches that are coming through now.
I definitely, first of all, thank you for that thorough explanation. You're definitely one of the guys that I respect and admire in this space. And I want the Osmers out there listening to pay close attention. The reality is, just as, I'm old enough to have had one of the backpack type cell phones, right? Because I thought it was cool to be able to order pizza on the way home in my car. I had no other real purpose for it. I did have some, appointments, and I could call the customer from their driveway, and they thought that was really cool. But there was no real business. It wasn't like I was some high-powered Wall Street guy running around. I was just some guy, contracting at the time and running a contracting company. And honestly, to order that pizza on the way home cost me more than the pizza did to make that stupid cell phone call. But I felt cool, right? Yeah. And so that was before the technology was even understood or known. And then you go into the middle where you got the flip phones that you talked about, people SMS. Yeah, people get it and they understand it, but it's not yet integrated as part of their lives, right? Today, people are spending hours on their mobile devices every single day. The majority of the website traffic at most of these e-commerce players is on mobile, which, just so many years ago, not that many years ago, 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know, we would just discount mobile advertising on Google, right? We would just say, hey, Google, you know what? I'll give you 10 cents on the dollar for what a desktop user is. Yeah. And today you might actually flip that script. What's your thoughts about mobile value today versus a 5, 6?
Absolutely. Look at the numbers on UK Flooring Direct alone. It's just been a steady growth year on year on year. But as you point out, the role has changed so significantly as well. People are now they're researching, they're considering, and they're purchasing on their mobile phones, and that's why you need to think mobile first when it comes to the customer experience. So mobile checkouts, speeding up the conversion process with things like Amazon Pay and PayPal checkouts and things like that. But it's going to continue to go. It's going to continue to move forward, because every year there are a new set of technologies that are coming out as part of the Apple and Android SDKs, which further enable consumers and e-commerce people to connect in new ways. So looking at UK Flooring Direct, for example, we know that around 10% of people order the wrong size flooring for their home, because I'm no DIY man, Steve. I actually ordered too many packs from UK Flooring when I bought it. I just couldn't measure the room properly. I got my tape measure out, my pencil, and I did it. Now, using the iPhone SDK, I can use augmented reality to measure the room perfectly. And then when you integrate that into the e-commerce experience, it generates a quote immediately onto the website. And so not only are we looking to make the e-commerce side of the business more efficient, the consumer is getting a better experience because they don't have to send back the packs, so they don't have to order extra packs, and you've got returns policy and things like that. So what's happening is that technology will continue to disrupt the relationship between the consumer and the vendor as time goes on. And I don't see it slowing down in the next few years at all.
No, as a matter of fact, I think you alluded to this earlier, but it's likely to accelerate this idea that Siri is now being used in meaningful ways, and Alexa and all of these other voice assistants that, again, 4 or 5 years ago, we thought of them more or less as hey, tell me a joke, Siri, or this or that. Now I find myself, hey, add up these numbers, or what's the weather like, or, text this person this message. It's these things, as they become integrated, will have massive potential behavioral change.
Although I am still waiting for them to do a Liverpudlian version of Siri. There's still no.
Yeah. See, I didn't realize that the Liverpudlians were being left out of the equation. But I can tell you this, and I would love to get your feedback on this, Rob. Maybe it's one of our final parting points. But this talk of machine learning and artificial intelligence, et cetera, it's becoming almost like apt, right? You can get pieces of this technology either through IBM Watson or Amazon's AWS, and you can just plug into these apps that are going to be able to help people. What's a key deployment of machine learning or AI that you see coming that e-commerce guys should try to use?
Yeah,
first one they should look at.
Sure. So I guess where I'm seeing it, the low-hanging fruit, I think, is around the automation of simple things. So, for example, if you're receiving calls, or emails with regards to where is my delivery or what is the scheduled date, that can be automated now. There are so many suppliers out there who've already cracked and solved that. So I think it's really about from an e-commerce perspective, is looking for where in your chain is there inefficiency with things that are repeatable and are causing inefficiency because you're doing the same thing over and over again. But I think it's going beyond that, mate, as well. I went to the Google Cloud conference last week, and for a couple of years, Google have been saying Google is an AI company, and I sort of maybe looked at that a little bit cynically, because they're an advertising company. It's an internet advertising company, but they have actually kept true to that word, and obviously they're trying to compete with IBM and Oracle and Amazon primarily. Amazon obviously led the space in the cloud computing world, and Google have really come at it with AI leading the way. And what's happened is, in typical Google fashion, they've created a set of tools, a set of use cases, a set of templates, a set of plugins, where that technical barriers come right down, where before you needed some heavy lifting from a data engineer or a computer scientist. If you're starting out, the barrier is really creativity. So it's less about having those technical skills. It's about getting some smart people in a room and coming up with some ideas from a business and a creative perspective. And that's the guys who are having good ideas 10 years ago are going to be the guys having good ideas 10 years. The technology is less and less of a barrier. Just one, I saw a really good example of what they did with a project with London Zoo ZSL. So London Zoo have the world's largest database of camera traps all over the world. So monkeys, lions, different types of all sort of sea creatures, everything. And what they've done is they've made that open source with a layer of the Google machine learning algorithm to increase the accuracy of everybody's camera traps all over the world. And so it's actually having a really positive increase on nature conservation, the power of machine learning. And I just thought it's so cool to see it being used for something like that. That's not just website conversions and whatnot. And, to be fair to Google, they make this kind of stuff available to organizations to leverage, and they make it quite easy. So I think, for me, creativity is the key at the moment to imagine what can be done.
I love it. Well, it's an exciting time to be involved in the technology space. For all of us today who are thinking about machine learning or AI, and it may seem overwhelming, it's getting easier. You heard it from Rob directly that it will be easier. Rob, thanks for taking the time today. It's been a real pleasure having you on Awesomers.
Steve, the pleasure was all mine, mate. I've really enjoyed it. I can't believe it went so quick. I was thinking, what are we going to talk about for an hour? It
goes fast. Well, again, thank you, Rob. And for the Awesomers out there listening, we'll be right back after this.
Empower. The name says it all. Connecting e-commerce entrepreneurs with great people, ideas, systems, and the services needed to stay business dynamic and to grow. Empowery is a network, a cooperative venture of tools and resources to make you better at what you do, because we love what you do. We are you. Visit empowery.com to learn more.
Hey, Amazon Marketplace professionals. Congratulations on your success to date. Your creativity, strategic vision, problem solving, and discipline have allowed you to build your own e-commerce business. Wouldn't it be great if you had more time to focus on the things that truly drive the sales and growth of your company? Instead of getting lost in a dozen different services and countless spreadsheets, what if there was one system that connected to your Amazon account and automatically gave you the information that you needed to make great decisions and really impact your business? Parsimony ERP can do that. Parsimony is the business operating system for your marketplace business. With Parsimony, you get true double-entry bookkeeping, easy financial statements, full customer service tools, and item-by-item profitability, along with project and task management, and more features are being added all the time. Learn more at parsimony.com. That's Parsimony, PARSIMONY.com. Parsimony.com. We've got that.
Well, you heard it from Rob directly. Time really does fly when you're having fun. So often these entrepreneurs, when I say, hey, let's do an interview for Awesomers.com, they say, okay, great, I'd love to be on there. It's exciting, and maybe it's their first time. I like to find people from everyday walks of life, people who are brilliant, people who are definitely awesomer, but maybe not people that you've heard of. And, the Gary V's of the world are exciting and fun, but, they have a big enough microphone. They don't need the help. And so I like to bring brilliant resources that maybe you haven't heard about. And Rob Jackson is a great example. Somebody who's really learned and really has deep understanding in his field of expertise. And he loves what he does. And he's really good at it. And that's an awesomer in every possible definition of the word. And so I really enjoyed catching up with him. And you heard, again, Rob say, gosh, the time flew so fast. And so many of the guests that we have on the show, they say the same thing, that, as we were going through the conversation, that it just flowed so fast that they had no idea that the time had expired. So it's really fun for me. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I did. Rob dropped some massive gold nuggets here in this episode and in the preceding ones as well. So make sure you take those to heart. Again, our final part 3 of this 3-part series, and this is Awesomers episode number 126. So go to awesomers.com/126 for any show notes and details. Well, we've done it again, everybody. We have another episode of the Awesomers podcast ready for the world. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you've enjoyed our program today. Now's a good time to take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this podcast. Heck, you could even leave a review if you wanted. Awesomers around you will appreciate your help. It's only with your participation and sharing that we'll be able to achieve our goals. Our success is literally in your hands. Thank you again for joining us. We are at your service. Find out more about me, Steve Simonson, our guest, team, and all the other Awesomers involved at awesomers.com. Thank you again.